pleasure now to introduce Dr. Shulamit Reinharz. Dr. Reinharz was born in Amsterdam after World War II. Her parents were refugees from Germany, and they had been in hiding throughout the war in Holland. They were among the 15% of the Jews who survived. Shula grew up in New Jersey, received her BA from Barnard College and her Ph.D. from Brandeis. She was on the faculty of the University of Michigan for 10 years as a professor of sociology. While she was at Michigan, she used a year-long sabbatical to do an in-depth field study of how people age on the kibbutz.
So, children of the sun, Yeldei HaShemesh. How many people here speak Hebrew? Wow, we have a nice... children of the sun, S-U-N, is a blend of a few people's memories. When the film hit the Israeli screens in 2007, so it's about a decade old, it caused a lot of controversy. Why is that? Well, first of all, everything causes controversy in Israel. But everybody has an opinion about the kibbutz. Is it thriving? Is it dying? Is it limping? Currently, how many kibbutzim are there? 268 and growing. The kibbutz population is growing. And kibbutzim, individual kibbutzim, are increasing in number. No single kibbutz has ever closed. So Children of the Sun invites you to join in the discussion about collective child rearing and the concept of kibbutz. Does anyone not know what a kibbutz is? It's fine to raise your hand. Now, isn't that interesting? Everybody here knows what that is. That it has an international reputation that goes about as far as Albuquerque and Santa Fe. So a film based on memories is charming but problematic. Why? Memories sometimes stem from singular experiences, but those experiences may not even have occurred. As you get older, what occurred and what didn't occur becomes interesting. Memories are also not consistent around a group. If they would be consistent, you wouldn't have to have an evaluation. You could just have one person do it, right? When you watch this film, I'm going to give you one challenge. Look at the connection or lack of connection between the memories and the films of that time. Enjoy the film. Does anyone have a burning question? Yes. Good idea. The question was there accommodation for mentally or physically challenged children? And there was. They wanted to have those children learn from those who didn't have those issues and become as much like them as possible. So instead of climbing up, 500 feet, they would climb up 5 feet. But it was accepting. The only time I saw an exception to that was when I was there living on the kibbutz for a year. The one volunteer came. That's a whole other story. Lots and lots of volunteers came to the kibbutz and brought in other influences and married the kibbutznikim, sometimes staying on the kibbutz, sometimes not. They had ulpanim. An ulpan is a place where you study Hebrew. That was on the kibbutz because the idea, they had another goal, aside from all these goals, which was to be known by the rest of the world as the place where Jews thrive and where they speak Hebrew and where they have a renaissance of culture. So they invited, it was not a closed-off society. And they actually devoted one person's work assignment to taking care of the people in Wuhan, and another person was to take care of the volunteers. So one of the volunteers who came while I was there was completely deaf, and they did not know how to deal with her. And she didn't know how to cope with the situation. Deaf in a situation where there's a foreign language being spoken all the way. So eventually she left. But I saw people with disabilities, and when people get older, not you, they developed disabilities. And there was a constant accommodation. In fact, and I find this very interesting, the kibbutz members who became old, like those old people you saw, which I think is a completely distorted image to stick in there, but that's another story, because it looks like they're the only people there. Yeah. It's completely untrue. What is the guy sweeping up? He's sweeping up the schmutz from all the hundreds of people who are actually in the kibbutz. But he was showing you, there's no kibbutz that could survive on 6 old elderly people. This doesn't make any sense. That's why I think there's some weirdness about the film. But anyhow, when kibbutz members got older, they said that our ideology has always been labor, avodah. Without labor, the country can't flourish. And labor, physical labor, is part of the new Jew. And even if I'm old and blind, chas v'chalila, and can't walk around, and I have the right to work. The right to work, that is a concept that's very unusual in world societies. And you, kibbutz, they were saying they're members of it, have the responsibility to provide me with an opportunity to work. Even in the Beit Shishim, which is like an old age home on the kibbutz, they wanted people from the plastics factory to schlep the stuff that they could put like this or whatever it is to do to the Beit Avot, to the old age home, so that they could do some work. Okay, I don't know what that was the answer to. Oh, it was the answer to the disability question. Thank you.
What year were you there?
I was there the best possible year, 1979 to 1980. Why do I say that? Hold on. Because it was 50 years, was the 50-year anniversary of the kibbutz, which meant that they were all thinking about what have we done in these 50 years? Why have we failed? Why have we succeeded? Why are we growing? Why are we not growing enough? Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like maybe on your 50th birthday, you thought back on your life. So that was going on all the time. So it helped me understand this society. The second reason it was great, and they had celebrations all the time. They put on a play about what is a kibbutz with a little bit of sarcasm and humor. And they said a kibbutz is a group of people living in Israel, devoted to agriculture, and with a researcher in their midst. So, because people have studied the kibbutz, at length, and I sort of felt good to be included in that, although I don't know if I was being mocked, but who knows. So anyhow, that was one reason it was great, and the other reason it was great was 2 revolutions were going on at that time. A revolution within the revolutionary kibbutz. One was that the children's houses were closed down. Do you remember the different rules of kibbutz life with regard to children? Did you see that all of a sudden it said children must sleep in their home? Where did this come from? This came from mothers' discontent. The mothers said, I want my little puppies around me. I want to have the children sleep with me. I am suffering in this. And they came up with 2 solutions, maybe 2 or 3 years apart. The first solution was called Sha'at Ahava. Anybody who speaks Hebrew want to translate that? An hour of love. So this is the way that worked. Any mother, notice the gender division in the kibbutz all the time. Any mother who wants to shower a child with an hour of love can do so and go away from her work. Is that a good idea? Completely terrible idea. Because, number one, the kid would, let's say the mother came at 11 every day. Starting at 10 o'clock, the kid was always looking, you know? At 12, when she left, he was bereft. So it was so disruptive. The mitapelet, who was taking care of all the children, she was interrupted. She didn't even know which kid was going to be where, when, you know? And it was not a satisfying solution. So what happens in the kibbutz if they don't like it? It's all what was called at the time participatory democracy. You go and do it yourself. Do you know how good that is for your mind? If you had to meet, let's say this was a kibbutz, and you met every Saturday night for your so-called entertainment, which was a kibbutz collective meeting, there would be items on the agenda, and they would start. Should we invest X amount of money in the factory, or should we improve our dining room? And you saw that with regard to the naming of the child. But that is so extreme, I never heard of that. Should the child have this name or that name? And you had to come up with good arguments. You know, I saw one very interesting thing there with regard to that. First of all, the women came and they were just knitting the whole time, and they didn't speak up. The men were running the show. After I left, they instituted a new idea, which was that every kibbutz would have 2 leaders. It's called a maskir, like a secretary. They call it secretary, but that doesn't mean the same thing here. A man and a woman, because they were always trying to solve problems. You know, the Sha'at Ahava was a bust, and everyone was frustrated. And of course, the work job. Let's say you're working as the bookkeeper, and all of a sudden, I'm going to love my child. I'll be back in an hour. You know, it doesn't work. So they came up with a new idea: shut the whole thing down. And so they had kibbutz meetings. Should we shut them down? Should we not shut them down? And the not shut them down people won. The do not shut them down. And this was the amazing thing for me. It was the other revolution, not only the old age revolution that I told you about. The other revolution was the women said in French, "I don't give a shit." They said, "You can decide all you want. I am taking my child out of there. I am not going to take my neonate and give it to, my best friend who's on the kibbutz, let's say, and be its mitapelet." It's not that they didn't trust them. They just wanted the child near them more. So they said, "We're going to do it anyhow." This was pretty weird, because the collective was always making decisions. And the expectation was that you would abide by them. They said no. I was there. And they took them home. So what they did was I would call it, a forced decision on the kibbutz. The kibbutz can decide up and down a list of things, what they think is right. But if the people don't accept that, what are you going to do? You can throw them out. You can say, "You violated our collective rule, and so you got to go." You'd have to, there would be a lot of people leaving. And so the kibbutz responsibly decided to shut the kibbutz, to shut the children's houses down. Lina Mishutefet, it's called, collective sleeping, which is very, very interesting that that's the name of it, because sleeping was not the big deal. They did a lot of things during the day, right? But it was a big deal for the mothers. The mothers wanted them there. Zionism was a revolution. What was the revolution? To take Jews out of Eastern Europe and have them not go to America. How many people came to America? 2 million. How many people came on the first group that came to Palestine? 14. That were even remembered is amazing. So these 14 people came, and they created a town called Rishon LeZion, which means the first to come to Zion, which is Israel. And their attempt to create a town, these 14 people, failed. They couldn't do it because of lack of water, illness among themselves, etc. What did they do? Did they go back to Russia and say, I guess that didn't work? No. They contacted the two richest Jews in the world. It's always a good idea. The Baron de Rothschild and the Baron de Hirsch. They were barons with lots of money. They lived in Europe. And they said, we will help you. And they gave them welfare. It was called chalukah. You could call it tzedakah. You could call it many things. They sent money over. So now this little town of Rishon LeZion and another one of Gadara, they were functioning because it didn't matter if they made a profit or not. They had money coming in. Is that a way to build a country? I don't think so. So, so that was the first aliyah. The first group of people coming. They have no prestige in Israel today because they relied on this chalukah. The kibbutz has tons of prestige, although some people don't like it, of course, and they were successful. How successful were they? Martin Buber in 1949 questioned whether the kibbutz could survive. And he came up with an answer. The answer is, the kibbutz is an experiment that has not failed. And I put a comma, yet. Because that's what they were all worried about. And that's why I wrote this book. This book is called 100 Years of Kibbutz Life. Do you know that there's no alternative society that has lasted that long? And we are now way beyond 100 because that's 1909 to 2009. If you want to see it, you can get it from Transaction Books. I wrote it with a kibbutz member. So what happened? This first aliyah came, these kids, and they brought all the old ideas of Europe with them, such as the women stay home, the idea of creating a revolution, a new Jew, a new society, not just transferring the old ideas from Europe to Palestine. The idea of doing something new began to develop. And that developed with Theodor Herzl. Theodor Herzl did not say, let's take our shtetls and put shtetls in Palestine. He said, let's have a new society, a utopian society. I want you to really understand this, because when Palestine began to be populated by Jews in 48, it became a state. People think that's a big revolution because for the first time since we were expelled from Jerusalem by the Romans, we now have control over our own area. It's true, that's a great revolution. But another revolution that sometimes gets buried is that the society that would be created in Palestine was going to be a utopian society. Jews don't mess around. It's not just I'm going to go somewhere, but when I go there, it's going to be the best possible human relationship that it could possibly be. And I want to just give you Herzl's words in the book that he wrote with the perfect title, Alt Neuland. Alt Neuland, that means the old new land. Old, everything that came from Europe was old, even if you were 3 years old. It was this old set of values. When we come to Palestine, we will have a new one. And here is what he said. Just part of it. You should read this book, Alt Neuland. It's translated, of course. The towns are spacious and well-planned, enjoying the benefits of a noiseless mass transit system. He was trying to come up with the best possible society. I like noiseless mass transit system. Men work, he differentiated, men worked a 7-hour day. After that, your time was your own. You could be creative. You could do anything your heart's desired after the 7-hour day. Women have the vote. This was 1904. This is not exactly when we got the vote in the United States. Cooperation, Herzl said, is the keynote. Cooperation. I don't think that's, what do you call it, characteristic of our society, is the keynote. Can you imagine Trump, the cooperator? Okay. Cooperation is the keynote of political, agricultural, and social life, eliminating the exploitation of man by man. Criminals are not punished. That's why Israelis says, no. Criminals are not punished, but are re-educated. Beautiful concept. Education through university is free. You know, come up with any wonderful idea. Think of, it's a great mental exercise. What is the ideal society? Everybody would be thin? No. Okay. So people were very inspired by this concept of the new Jew and the new society. It is sad that the new Jew, well, there's two weird things about the book. One was he expected everyone to speak German. Because German, at the time, was considered the most elite and sophisticated language. For some reason, I guess because he didn't know Hebrew, he didn't stick that in to his ideal society. And the other thing is, the new Jew that they wanted to create, and thank God they did create, was a man. The new Jew was not the new Jew and the new Jewess, you know? So the idea of what a Jewish woman in Israel should be is still being worked out. As it is, you know, this is 100 and something years later. Another thing I want you to know, and that is that in 1901, this was, 1897 was the first Congress, 1901 they had one every year, it was the 5th Congress, the Jewish National Fund was created. Does anyone know what the Jewish National Fund is? What is it? It's the JNF, sort of. Karen Kayemet L'Yisrael, which means the money collected, how was it collected? In these little boxes. Little boxes, and then also Baron de Rothschild and Maurice Hirsch, and wealthy people who could afford to give money that didn't fit in the box. Anyhow, what did they do with this money? They bought land from the Arabs. Rishon LeZion was bought, Gedera was bought, all the kibbutzim were on bought land. And now I'm going to tell you a story about a woman, a new Jewish woman. In 1904, all of this is happening at the turn of the century. The year that Herzl died, so sad that he only lived 7 years after his first Congress. You should read the protocols of the Congresses. It's so interesting what they did. They debated whether or not there should be an art school in Israel, in Palestine. They debated, because they wanted to create a perfect society. They decided to build an art school. And that was called, what is it called? Bezalel. Bezalel, right. And then later Bezalel gave this art collection to what became the Jewish Museum. Everything that the Israel Museum, everything you can see is connected in the formation of the state and its culture. So in 1904, the year that Herzl died, a 24-year-old Russian woman, because the early Aliyot were all Russia, traveling alone, this woman, disembarked from a boat that landed in the Jaffa port. Jaffa was an Arab city. Now it's kind of combined. They call it Tel Aviv Yafo. And she was not a Zionist. She arrived. Why had she come to Palestine at all? Because her brother had sent her a telegram begging her to come and help him because he was sick. This was a ruse. He wasn't sick at all. But, you know, the boat had turned around when she realized that he was fine. The reason he wanted to bring her, oh, come on, 5 minutes? All right. How many people want to stay like for 6 minutes? Okay, so anyhow, she was involved in trying to murder the Tsar, which was not a great idea. She would probably be caught. And besides, it wasn't a productive idea. Because if one Tsar is murdered, what happens? You get another Tsar. So her brother said, come to Palestine. He thought this would be some new exciting adventure for her, and it turned out to be that. She had studied economics. She traveled the country on a camel, I believe, with a person who actually knew how to ride a camel, a Bedouin, and they went everywhere. And she visited every town that had been established, and she discovered something an economist would find very interesting. No single town, no single enterprise had made a profit. So the country was not going to go anywhere. And she decided, after studying abroad, that there was a way to make a profit. Not like, you know, Daniel and Miriam, those profits, a real profit. Okay. So Manya said, what I need is land and people who are willing to do this for a year. Work collectively. She came up with this whole concept, which is the foundation of the kibbutz. She did that. Okay. So that's why, and so she did that. Ben Gurion lived in a nearby town. He claimed he was part of the collective. He was not. And he came to the collective every night and taught them Hebrew, which they didn't know. Imagine this. There were, I think, 18 young people between the ages of, let's say, 15 and 25. What happens when you put them together in this collective? They fall in love, right? They want to get married. So they did, including Manya. She married one of the guys. His name was Yisrael. And Yisrael had another idea in mind altogether. He also wanted to experiment. And that was to create a self-defense system for the Jews. The Jews had to be able to take care of themselves when the Arabs came and tried to murder them, and when the Arabs came and tried to steal their property. So he said to Manya, I'll bring my group that's training for this. You can have them for a year, work out your cockamamie collective concept, and then at the end of that you will work with us on the Haganah. He was the founder of the Haganah and the IDF.
What was his name?
Yisrael Shochat. Yisrael Shochat. And there are like museums from him and all this stuff. No museum for Manya. But there is a postal stamp. There is a postal stamp. There's also the one street in Israel that's named for Manya and Yisrael Shochat. And it's a very short street. So I'm very disappointed about all of that. So the couples, some of the couples drifted off to do this, some drifted off to do that, and some went down to the Kinneret. It's downhill. And what did they form? They founded Kibbutz Degania. Kinneret came later, and that's always called the first kibbutz. I think the collective was the first kibbutz, but the collective was a one-year contract, and Degania is still a thriving kibbutz to this day. So the kibbutz is, I just want to tell you one last thing since I'm not given enough time. But what is the nature, I told you a little bit about the nature of the new society, right? That was a brief description. What about the people? Would they be new as well? And Herzl said, we want to create a new Jew. Think about the shtetl, change everything. It's not snowing, it's sunny. Men don't have beards. Men don't wear kippot. Women were still doing the same thing. But so this was the new Jew that they wanted to create, and I want to just tell you what it was and how this kibbutz that you saw here implemented it. The children would be outdoors a lot. Did you see that? That's why they're called children of the sun. They would learn to love the land, explore it, understand their environment, both aesthetically and as a place to work, and third, in a Zionist way. They would learn about gardening. Did you see how they were doing this? And animal husbandry. I don't know if they showed it to you, but they all took care of animals. They were in groups of 8 to 10, these children. They would eat together, sleep together, and even bathe together. You saw all of that. They would start their lives in a group home for infants, and as they got older, they would move as a group from place to place. They were called chalutzim. They were the ideal of Israeli society. They were not the majority. They never got beyond 7% of the population. Not everybody is willing to take all of whatever they earn or whatever they have and put it into a collective. Saw the girl with her sweater? So she was learning that what you get is not yours. It belongs to the... That has all changed. When I came with my red sweater, I got it back. Every time I said something. I didn't take it from anybody. I had a little, what are those things called, cubby hole or something, in the laundry, the collective laundry. And I had a number and a tag, a color. The kibbutz lost favor in Israeli society in 1977. Okay, not so much later than the founding of the state. Did you hear that television broadcast?
Yeah.
That was the end of the admiration for the kibbutz. People thought it was going to be the end of the kibbutz. It wasn't. But the admiration. What did Begin say? I do not like kibbutzim. And all the people were sitting there aghast. What? Oh, Begin was saying, we want to be a capitalist society. We don't want to be a society that has these May Day parades and admires the Soviet Union. We want to be a society that is competitive in the world markets, creates ways, creates all sorts of things that the world wants. We can become wealthy and attractive, and Jews will come. So he wanted to break that tie. Marsha wants me to talk about what happened in terms of the impact on the society in 2 sentences. The impact on the society, oh, this is so funny. Can I just tell a joke? So, a reporter, maybe you've heard this, a reporter goes to Israel, finds somebody on the street, and says, could you please describe Israel in 1 word? The person says, good. The reporter says, what do you mean, good? There's so many problems, there's wars, there's this. He says, all right, not good. I just love that, and I know, that. So the kibbutz impact was good. If there's a 7-hour work period, okay, and everything is provided for you, what are you going to do with the other hours? You're going to sleep some of it, right? And you belong to committees, but you will also develop your skills. Everybody on the kibbutz is an artist, or a musician, or a craftsperson, or a writer. Amos Oz, and poets, and professors like Yehuda Bauer. They inundated the Israeli society with the products of their free time.